The Niners just traded Kwon Alexander to the Saints for a 5th-round pick and Kiko Alonso Vish. What do we make of this? What do you make of this?
I thought it was a great move. I think Kwon Alexander's contract has been something that has been a gripe amongst fans, media, maybe even players alike. And I think it was the right move to move off of his contract. I don't think that it's an indicator that the Niners are tanking or anything of the sort, because there were rumors during the draft that they were interested in moving Kwon Alexander at the time. And it's a tough contract to move, so they might not have gotten the right deal. They did restructure his contract before the season for this season, so they clearly had issues with how much he was getting paid. And I think when they signed him, they did not know that Fred Warner would become what Fred Warner has become, and that Dre Greenlaw would be a very, very viable number 2 linebacker.
They were still trying to replace Reuben Foster.
Right.
Remember?
So
Yeah.
It was the right signing at the time. Maybe they overpaid him a bit, but that's what you do in free agency. And it was a product of them missing on Reuben Foster. But now that linebacker room is shored up, it looks like Flanagan Foles they really like because he's been on this roster. Azeez Al-Shaair, they keep talking about how much they like him. I thought he played really well versus New England, one of his better games. And he's fast and he hits. So in that case, I think that this was the right move. I'm glad that they were able to finally find a suitor to take his contract. I wish they got a higher pick, but I can't complain.
Yeah, and just a couple of days ago, I put a video on YouTube. Is it a good thing if Kwon Alexander plays against the Seahawks? Now, maybe they could have used him, but I think we've been going back and forth for a few weeks. Like, does he have a positive impact? He clearly makes an impact. He's all over the field. But is that in a good way? And I think both of us were kind of feeling like maybe not. And now it's interesting that the Niners, that's the first guy they got rid of. I was thinking Jimmy Ward, Jaquiski Tartt, Jimmy Garoppolo. No, this is the guy. You start with D Ford if you could, but he's not tradable. Kwon Alexander is. Good thing that the Saints are a little desperate and they need to take on someone like Kwon and his
And he is a good player. I think that we kind of overstate Kwon Alexander's shortcomings. Like, there are a lot of things he does well, and he might be the most athletic linebacker in football. Him, Deion Jones, those kind of guys. Like, Kwon Alexander is a legit 4.45, 4.4 kind of linebacker. So he does have talent, and there are things he does really well. He is good in coverage. I think the big issue with Kwon Alexander has been that contract and the fact that Fred Warner makes a 3rd-round pick salary, and Dre Greenlaw, who approximates Kwon Alexander's value more than enough and does certain things better, is paid like tens of millions of dollars less, which basically made Kwon Alexander expendable. The Saints, I think it was a good move for them. They got a good player, and they're clearly all in on this year, because next year they're probably going to be done because Breeze is done, and it's going to be Taysom Hill probably at quarterback because that contract is immovable, and a bunch of people are going to get cut as salary dumps. But that's going to be something different that's probably a different conversation away from the 49ers. But yeah, I think John Lynch, Parag Marath, they did a phenomenal job being able to move what was seemingly an unmovable contract.
Absolutely. They got a draft pick. They needed a draft pick. They shedded some salary cap space. Who knows? I mean, maybe the Niners want to use that space. Maybe the Niners feel like we were interpreting this as maybe they're sellers at the deadline. Maybe they just needed a little space so they could buy something. Who knows?
Right. Right. And if you remember, the first time I came on your show, we did a buyer-seller topic, and it was right after the Nick Bosa injury, and we had concerns of this team being what they wanted to be just because of losing Nick Bosa. Now, a lot of different things has happened since then, but I think both of us said that D Ford and Kwon Alexander were basically immovable. So we were talking guys like Tartt and guys of that sense, but now they did a phenomenal job by being able to move Kwon Alexander. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I don't think it indicates tanking by any means, because I think that the better option in general would be to have Dre Greenlaw as your starting linebacker at this price, rather than having Kwon Alexander as his price, regardless of whether you're going to be a Super Bowl team, a mid-tier team, or anything.
Do you think the Niners make any more moves, or do you think they should before the deadline, which is tomorrow?
Yeah, I would make a couple more moves.
What would you like to see him do?
It comes down to how they value compensatory pick versus what they're going to get for a guy. So it's that's going to be the balance, and they're going to have to make those decisions in a very short time here. So
Tart would be the Tart would
right,
exactly
right. A guy
explain
like Tart, we've talked about him. He's a very, very good football player. This is not about in how he is as a football player. This is more the fact that they probably cannot keep Jaquiski Tart next year. It's just not. It just doesn't make sense. The money is not there.
Cap's
And
going down.
he's a good enough player where he's going to get a mid-tier deal somewhere, and he's probably going to do well where he goes.
He's worth more than Kwon.
Right. Oh, surely. He's a better player than Kwon, in my opinion. As a strong safety, I think he's better than Kwon is as a middle linebacker or a weak side linebacker. So in that sense, I think that maybe you can move Jaquiski Tart, and it comes down to how you value. Well, you probably have to ask around and see what is Tart's value as if he gets signed as a free agent. And if you get a third round compensatory for him, then yeah, you would rather have him play out the season and pick 10 spots lower than get a third round pick for him through trade. So it's just weighing that. I think that's what it comes down to.